Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of the AutoTrader Podcast, SA's #1 motoring podcast. My name is Wandile Sishi, and once again, like always, joined by George Mienie. Hi, George.
Hey, Wendy.
Yeah, today's a super exciting episode.
Tell me.
Something that a lot of people have asked about, and something that we're both passionate about. It's finally the Formula One episode, and we're gonna be non-biased, and we're just gonna talk about something that we're both passionate about without fighting. Hopefully.
Sure, this is not going to be the Hamilton episode.
No, I'm gonna have an open mind. I'm gonna have an open mind and hear what your thoughts are.
Well, I mean, let's start by kind of having a look at the Formula One standings. What are the Formula One standings?
So it's a brand new season. We're about 3 races into the season, and currently, as a constructor, so the team essentially that's winning currently is Mercedes-Benz, but the driver who is currently winning is Charles Leclerc, who actually has more points than anybody else right now. So he's currently winning. So yeah, it's quite an interesting season that we're having now. There's basically new rule changes, so brand new cars, brand new challenges that the teams are facing and all the drivers are facing. So yeah.
So you're saying that the constructor that's in the lead is Mercedes-Benz and the driver that's in the lead is Leclerc. I mean, I know that, but it's disappointing for me that Perez is not doing so well, and it's disappointing for me that the two Ferraris are so far apart.
Yeah, there's definitely a disparity between the two, at both teams, at Red Bull as well as Ferrari.
Yes.
In terms of the performance of the two drivers, and now that I'm thinking about it, I think Ferrari is actually they definitely first as constructors as well, because Charles has 71 points, which is more than Mercedes.
Well, I've just looked it up. So I mean, Sainz is not doing that badly.
Yeah.
Perez is also not doing that badly. But if I look at the last couple of races, both Sainz and Perez have been way off their teammates.
For sure.
Look at the last race.
Well, I mean, it depends who you ask, because Perez, technically speaking, has more points than Max, but that's as a result of just DNFs. So Max has just been unable to finish 2 of the races so far, and that's kind of been the challenge that he's been facing. So in terms of speed, yes, Max is definitely faster, but at the end of the day, it's the points that counts. And Max is, he is the current champ. So we'll see how he bounces back and how the team can get the car ready for him.
Well, I mean, we've had a lot of one-hit wonders.
You think Max is a one-hit wonder?
No, I didn't say that. I did not say Max is a one-hit wonder. I didn't say that. Well, I thought you were a Hamilton dude.
I am definitely, but I respect Max's drive a lot. I think he's the second best driver. And
I don't know. I think Max has a slight issue.
A need for speed issue.
No, he's got to keep his emotions in check.
For sure. But I think. The fact
came
that
out in the first race, remember?
Yeah. No, it did, for sure. I mean, he was on the radio blasting his team like nobody's business.
Yeah, I saw a little glimpse of that in Hamilton in the last race. I don't know if you saw his radio message, like, "Hey guys, you're putting me in a difficult situation."
Yeah.
So that kind of, for me, that statement says it's your fault.
Yeah, for sure.
It's not my fault.
Yeah.
It's your fault. And I'm thinking to myself, you're driving the bloody car. Just because the strategy went wrong, I'm part of that strategy.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think Hamilton's been really unfortunate the last, I'd say, 4 races. He's last year already.
Absolutely, I agree. But he can't say things like it's your fault. It's our fault.
For sure. I think he does do that. I think he takes a lot of accountability for his parts in it as well. I don't think, he completely blames the team whenever things don't go his way.
So Ferrari is in the lead. Just looked it up.
Yeah,
104 points. Mercedes 65. That's, depending on when this is aired, before or after a race. But Mercedes is lagging far behind Ferrari from a constructor's point of view. Hey,
for sure. But we'll see how things go. I think Mercedes, they're gonna get their car fixed. So
do you know what the problem is with that car?
Well, I think there's a few problems with the vehicle.
I figured. I didn't figure out, but I heard about the main problem last week. And they designed their car with smaller side pods.
Yep. Whereas Ferrari is a lot wider.
All the other cars are a lot wider.
Yeah. So structurally, they're more intact.
And besides that,
Yeah.
it gives so the Ferrari and all the other cars have more floor.
Exactly.
And now with this new, I don't know if you've read up on the new floorboards,
Yeah.
which have an effect called ground effect.
Ground effect.
Ground
yeah.
effect.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you think about what ground effect is, it sucks the car into the ground,
Yeah.
almost like an upside down airplane wing.
It's exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so airplanes cause lift from the bottom or the top of the wing, from the top of the wing, not from the bottom. So people think that an airplane flies and it floats on the air. It doesn't. The pressure actually pulls the airplane into the sky.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing with that floorboard. So it's upside down. Effectively, if for lack of a better word, upside down airplane wing sucks the car into the ground, and that's what's causing this porpoising.
Yeah.
And it's quite an aha moment for me, because Mercedes made their side pods smaller. And it just shows you that digital simulation isn't like the real world.
No, because of that digital simulation, we thought it would be about a second quicker. So, a second quicker is a lot. If that was the case, then if you take the last race where I think Charles was ahead by about...
half a minute?
About 800, an eighth of a second, essentially.
Per lap, yeah.
So if the Mercedes car was the second that they claim it's supposed to be, then we would technically be number one. But like you're saying, that's not how it works in the real world.
No.
You're not going to account for every sort of impact that the car's going to be put through, and these cars put through a lot. It's quite staggering how much forces are impacted in these cars.
Exactly.
Yeah. So some history on the F1. So it started about in 1950 by a bunch of guys who wanted to go racing.
Bunch of hooligans.
Yeah, a bunch of hooligans essentially with no insurance. Who wants to go racing, and now we've at a point where we have these super complex vehicles, which I think a lot of people don't know. Actually, the technology trickles down into a lot of the vehicles that we drive today.
It does. ABS brakes, I think. No, ABS brakes come from aviation.
I think they come from rally cars, no?
No, aviation.
Okay.
I think it comes from aviation. But quite a bit of technology comes from Formula One.
For sure. I don't know if you know any other ones, but I was just going to give you a crash course in 7 modern innovations, which are...
Go for it.
Kind of in from F1 cars into modern day cars. The first one is semi-automatic gears, which led to the flappy paddle gearbox. But essentially before...
But have you seen cars now have flappy paddle gearbox thingies?
Yeah.
When the gearbox doesn't need flappy paddles.
It's fun to have.
Did you see the Audi e-tron yesterday?
I did see it.
It's got flappy paddles.
I mean, that's an electric vehicle, though.
Yes, exactly.
So what's it for?
Don't know.
I will have to ask the journalist, because I'm interested to find out why.
Don't know why it's there.
That's
when I drove it yesterday, I didn't know why it's there.
Yeah, well, essentially...
but let's not knock the electric vehicle or Audi for that matter, because I've seen it on other cars too.
I'm sure there's a use. I'm sure there's a case use for it.
No, I clicked on the flappy paddles and nothing happened. Okay, what next? Disc brakes.
It's like disc brakes, yeah. So essentially they come from, originally from Le Mans, but they were really tested in F1 cars to see, how far we can take disc brakes, and now they pretty much a standard in all vehicles now.
Well, I mean, it's just for everybody's benefit. The first brakes were drum brakes, right?
Yeah.
And drum brakes effectively a housing with a cylinder.
Yeah.
And inside the brake pad pushes out on the drum.
Yeah.
And doesn't clamp onto, which the disc brake something clamps onto the disc. So much more effective.
For sure. I think it's because of heat, no? Is heat the big issue with...
drum brakes?
Yeah.
I think it's heat, and then also force.
Yeah.
The ability for you to, push out on that drum. But heat, heat's a big issue because you've got to contain space there.
Yeah. Next one's carbon fiber. So if a lot of people don't know this, but carbon fiber is about 10 times stronger than steel. If you consider, in comparison to the weight of the material. And it's a lot safer. It's kind of the big thing of F1 why at one point it wasn't even going to carry on because the safety was just
ridiculous.
Not there.
Yeah.
Whereas now drivers are, kind of experiencing high impacts and still coming out of those vehicles safely. So carbon fiber, big big evolution that comes from F1. Next one is rear view mirrors. I don't know if you knew this, but rear view mirrors come from F1. Before, people just didn't know what was happening behind them.
You're talking about the side mirrors.
Yeah, rear view. Oh, the side. Well, yeah, side mirrors.
So rear view mirror is the one in the middle.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
side mirrors.
Side mirrors.
Actually, I didn't know that. You know, and I mean, it's an essential part of a car now because you can't do without it. I wonder when Formula One's going to take that rear view mirror to. I suppose they don't need to. You know, digital technology.
I mean, we've seen in some of these electric vehicles with the digital technology, they're not as effective as having just a mirror.
Yeah.
So I don't know if they would.
Well, is it that, or is it our habits? Because when I drove the Audi e-tron, that with those mirrors, it didn't take me long, maybe about 40 minutes before I started getting used to where to look. Because it's where to look that's the problem. You know, so you got the camera on the little pod on the outside, and then the display on the inside of the door. You're used to looking through the window.
Okay.
At the rear view mirror, at the side mirror.
But now you're looking just
below.
You're
looking just below on the door inside the car.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't make sense to your head.
Okay.
But you get used to it very quickly.
Maybe it will be a digital screen that's right in front of you instead of having to look side by side.
Maybe. I mean, the new current generation iPace has the center rear view mirror as a camera. If you want it to be, you can flip it between a camera and a mirror.
Okay.
Which I think is a good design.
To kind of address this.
Yes.
Next tech is joypad steering wheel. So, I mean, on an F1 car, those steering wheels basically
it's like a computer.
Yeah, hundreds and hundreds of different controls and configurations that you can kind of tweak to make sure that the car works for you, depending on the track, depending on the conditions. And we just have kind of inputs now in our vehicles which control the radio and XYZ. But
you're talking about the multifunction steering wheel.
100%, which originally came from F1 because of just convenience of not having to move around too much. Next one is active suspension, or the last one rather is active suspension. So most suspension on vehicles is just passive. You know, it does what it does all the time. It's the same thing all the time. Whereas an F1 car, that's when they realize that sometimes having a suspension that that reacts to what's happening on the track can have, you know, serious implications with regards to how fast your car can go around corners specifically, and to win the race essentially.
Well, I mean, let's explain what active versus passive suspension is. You know, passive suspension is really just think about a spring on a control arm and then a shock absorber inside that spring. Yeah, and
reacts the same way always.
It reacts to the road. Yeah. Every single time in the same way. You put a force on the wheel and the spring
goes up,
dampens the shock absorber, and the spring dampens the shock, but it does the same thing. So if you've got this undulating road that's up and down all the time, the car's going to bounce all the time. Whereas with active suspension, the car recognizes that, okay, maybe I should make this suspension stiffer, you know, in order to not react so violently to the undulation.
So this is specific to its relation to how it shakes where you're sitting, essentially. The wheel's still doing the same thing.
Well, think about what suspension is there to do. It's there to dampen the shock, the bump. Simply, it's there to dampen the bump. So what the suspension is trying to do is trying to keep the car still. Yeah. So the wheels move and take the knock.
The force, yeah.
You know, so that the cabin stays still. Keep the occupants comfortable and safety, because the more the cockpit moves around, the more the car can get out of control.
Yeah. So let's just talk about the current F1 season, because I think it's, you know, it's brand new, fresh new rules.
Love the look of the cars.
It
is. They're awesome. The following is, I mean, look at that first race with Leclerc and Max. Yeah. And how many times they passed each other. Yeah.
It's so exciting now. I think there's a lot more overtaking now as a result of this new ground effect, and how the aero packages are just so much better in terms of allowing for closer racing. But there's a few big changes in the rules, and I think a lot of people don't necessarily go and read what the formula is. But there's some big changes for all the teams. The first one is cost cap. So before it was kind of free for all, unless you're Ferrari and you're receiving a little bit extra from the legacy bonus. it was kind of up to how much money you can generate and how much money you can invest, and that was the big defining factor. So the caps are now around 110 million pounds, which is about 2 billion rand or euros. Is it euros? No, pounds. Yeah,
pounds.
Which is about 2 billion rands per team, which is still insane. You know, these cars are extremely expensive.
110 billion pounds.
110 million pounds.
Yes, you're right. Which is about 2 billion rands.
Correct. Yes. So that's the big change, and all teams are kind of forced to work within these confines now. And the result is the old number one is not number one right now, but we'll see what happens. I think there's still a long season to go.
I mean, I think the cost capping is a good thing because it stops the teams with unlimited amounts of money from staying ahead, which then makes it boring for the viewers.
Yeah.
You know, it does. There is a negative effect though,
in terms
and
of
that is innovation.
Development
and innovation. There is a negative effect. So I'm hoping that development and innovation doesn't get stifled as a result of these cost caps. What's the next one?
The next one is safety. So last year we had let's say the last 3 years, there've been big changes in terms of safety in F1 cars. But now the big change is the chassis now absorb about 48% more force and 15% more energy in the front when the car's in accidents. I mean, we saw Max, I think his crash was 55 Gs that he experienced, which is, it's hard to wrap your head around just how much force that is.
No, I mean, like think about fighter pilots, right? They experience 9-10 Gs in those fighter jets.
Sometimes.
Very extreme cases. You know, most of the time, maybe 6-7 Gs. And taking an ordinary person like you and I in a fighter jet, you'll pass out at those Gs.
Yeah.
You know, they have to use breathing exercises, neck training, suits in order not to pass out. Now you have a crash at 55 Gs, and you know, surely he passed out for a while.
I mean, he was in the car for a little while, but he kind of stood up like a champ. That's just how strong and robust these vehicles are now. They kind of absorb so much force and make sure that you're safe. I mean, we also saw with Roman's crash last year. I mean, that was a fiery storm, and I thought there's no way anyone can survive that. But he came out of that, you know, the flames. And safety is just such a big part of the sport, and it's the reason why we can carry on watching it at these incredible speeds. Next one is tires. So there's new tires in the cars, 18-inch low profile.
They actually look cooler.
Yeah,
I think they look cooler. I suppose what the effect of that is there's less give in the tire, which means that your ability, your traction gets diminished when the tire gets the lower profile. I mean, all these Durbanites that like their low profile dropped suspension, it actually doesn't give you more traction, peeps.
Yeah. I mean, outright yes, but it looks cooler.
Yeah, no, it looks cooler. Of course it looks cooler. But when you put your foot on the gas, low profile tires actually don't give you more traction. They break away from the tar easier because they're attached to the rim. Yeah. Whereas the higher profile tire actually twists, which then stops the tire. It generates maximum force onto the tar.
But the big reason for this is they're trying to disperse the heat on the tires. That's what Pirelli was trying to attempt with these low profile tires. And they look cool, which is also okay.
They do look cool.
Next change is the wheels have also changed. So there's essentially new winglets over the wheels. I don't know if you noticed.
I saw they look like aeroplane winglets.
They look like little, yeah.
If you go in a jet, those things are big. Those winglets look humongous.
Yeah. So that's essentially been done just to send more air over the wheels. Once again, impacting, having the ground effect.
Well, let's talk about the aerodynamics for a second. What the teams, what you can do is, in order to have a car not follow you, is you create dirty air behind the car.
Exactly.
And that's what some of these teams were doing, is they created the dirty air behind the car.
Making it harder to chase,
making it harder for somebody to follow.
Yeah.
So now what the rules have done is they've cleaned up the air behind the car. Effectively making it easier for another car to follow.
Less dirty air. Less dirty air.
Yes.
So big. I think the person who's probably earning the most now in F1 teams is probably the person who's in charge of aerodynamics, because that's going to be the big deciding factor on who wins this year. So we'll see when the cars get their upgrades, because I think a lot of teams have learned, there's ways around some of the challenges they're facing.
Well, I mean, now aerodynamic drag becomes like one of the most important factors on the car, because when you push air over a surface, the vortex that gets created behind that particular object pulls the object back and holds it back. So now you've got to kind of try and create a scenario where you don't create the aerodynamic drag by having vortices behind the car that effectively pull it back. So aerodynamics is going to be a big deal, I think.
So, off the cuff, do you think there's anyone who is an obvious front runner for the title at this point? I mean, it's really early on.
It's very early. I think Mercedes is going to get their game together, to be honest, but I think it's going to be too late. I think if they don't get their act on in the next 3 to 4 races, it's going to be too late. Leclerc is going to run away with it. I think if Leclerc keeps his cool, he might win this championship. I think the only thing standing in the way of Verstappen challenging him is Verstappen's own head. And
the reliability of that Red Bull car is still going through a lot of things. I want the Red Bull and Ferrari sort of fight to be ongoing, just because it allows Mercedes to kind of slipstream around all of that. Hopefully there's some more crashes between Verstappen and Leclerc, and then, we go ahead and storm through. But I think it's going to be an extremely close season. I can't predict it. Normally I can kind of see where it's going to go.
No, it's because Hamilton's been running away with it for the last couple of years. It was easy to predict.
Sure. Also, he is the greatest of all time, so let's
please.
not...
He's got one more title to get.
One more title, then he's got the most championships. Yeah, but
he still hasn't won Schumacher.
Sure, but he's basically smashed every single other record. So, but that's... I think he's the greatest of all time. That's
no ways. Schumacher was the greatest of all time, and more than that, Ayrton Senna was the greatest of all time.
I don't know.
So I don't know. Hamilton's not the greatest of all time, in my opinion. He's up there with the greats, but I don't think he's the greatest of all time.
I think he's the great. But it's okay.
We're going to leave it at that before we can crawl across this table here.
Yeah. So I don't know. But just before we leave, there's some interesting things that have come out in the news in terms of Formula One. I don't know if you been listening to the rumblings.
Yeah, one of the things that I did notice was jewelry in the car.
Yeah,
was that targeted at Hamilton?
100%. I mean, who else wears jewelry in the car? I mean, that was a unnecessary.
But who wears jewelry in the car?
You gotta look good. You gotta look good always. I'm always gonna defend him. I'm sorry, but I don't know if you heard, but South Africa might be getting a race soon.
Oh, interesting stuff. Tell me more.
So essentially, I think it was about a week ago, the FIA announced that Las Vegas is going to be on the calendar next. And, from a lot of pressure from a lot of the drivers, specifically Hamilton, the next sort of announcement that people I think it's going to be, it's going to be South Africa.
I think the push is African continent.
Yeah, because it's a world championship.
It's a world championship.
Yeah.
And South Africa's the only place to really do that.
Yeah, I mean, we've hosted a few races before. I think there's been 21 Grand Prix in South Africa out of the 23 out of Africa. So it's kind of, and the last one being in 1993. So it's kind of the premier destination or the obvious choice right now. But, I'm not sure if it's going to be Kyalami or Cape Town. A lot of people are saying it could be...
I'm hoping it's Cape Town.
In Cape Town, yeah.
I'm hoping it's a street race in Cape Town.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm hoping it's a street race in Cape Town is because it will bring so much more to the economy.
Yeah.
So much more.
At the same time, the Kyalami is almost there. I mean, it's...
Yeah, Kyalami is almost there, but if you think about it, I mean, Kyalami is an amazing venue.
Yeah.
But if you think about it, street races are faster. They bring more to the economy because more changes have to happen to facilitate the race, which means more jobs, more people get involved.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot more. The money gets spread a lot further in a street race.
I mean, tracks are basically only for racing, right? Whereas if it's the street circuits, you can do a lot to kind of make the entire infrastructure great.
Yes.
All the time, yeah.
Well, you bring a lot more contractors on board.
Look at Monaco. Monaco, those streets are always in tip-top shape because it's a street race. They always have to upgrade it. And then I don't know if you heard, but Audi and Porsche might be entering F1. I think it's.
I did hear this rumor, and I wonder what the driver is.
I know Porsche is set to be teaming up with Red Bull. So Red Bull Racing is going to become a manufacturer under Porsche. That's
Verstappen's team.
Mm-hmm. Which I think it makes a lot of sense for Red Bull to become a manufacturer. They've gone to a point now where they've been using Honda for so long, and the reliability is just not there, and they have no control over what happens. I think a lot of that pressure is coming from Max, saying we need to, because if Red Bull had their reliability at a point where it was consistent, I think you would have more titles.
Rebranding Red Bull to Porsche, that would be epic. I think it would be epic. I think it'll enter another
epic for
the Formula One world, because it'll enter another era and another team that is a OEM constructor.
Yeah.
Because then you've got Ferrari, you've got Mercedes, you've got Porsche, you've got Renault, you've got who else? We've got Alpha. We've got.
As manufacturers, though, it would be just Porsche, Mercedes-Benz, Ferrari.
No, we've got Alpha and
Renault.
And Renault.
And McLaren, yeah.
And McLaren.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's what Formula One should be, really.
It should be about the.
It should be about
the
car companies. Yes, in my opinion.
Yeah. And not an energy drink brand. Well, Honda's. I mean, they've been in the sport for really long.
Yeah, but they're not branded Honda.
Yeah, it's kind of a shame. And then apparently Hamilton might retire at the end of the year.
It's gonna be if he loses.
That's gonna be if he wins. I think if he wins, he's gonna leave. If he loses, he might stay. In my opinion.
I don't know. I think he'd be a sore loser.
That's pretty much all the time we have. It's been a really interesting show. I know we can keep going on and on. Is there any last statements that you want to leave us with?
No.
That's it. Just keep watching and see what happens.
See what happens.
Yeah. Hamilton for the win.
Never.